Mohammad Asif is the director of Afghan Human Rights Foundation. Since coming to the UK as an asylum seeker in 2000, he has campaigned for the rights of asylum seekers and refugees as well. He's a socialist and campaigner for human rights and social justice. And we're very, very pleased and honored that he would agree to join us. And we look forward to him talking about how this day happened. And if possible, some of the background to it, please, Mohammed. Thank you very much and welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be here and be invited by those who sacrifice their precious time, for the sake of others who are less fortunate in our society. I came from Afghanistan exactly 22 years and 5 days. Yeah, I arrived 3 o'clock in the morning in Glasgow and, was there in a YMCA accommodation in Glasgow. And since then, on the very first night, I realized that there is something missing, because when we listen in Afghanistan and around the world, to the BBC World Service, we were told that Britain is a country which is equal, which is giving equal rights no matter what your background is and what your affiliation is and what is your color or race or religion. So, but on the very first night, I found it really, really odd, that the way we were treated, asylum seekers. And it was my colleague, Eniola Adivali from Nigeria, a very eloquent man, sadly passed away about 6 years ago, a very committed Christian, but a wonderful man and my very dear friend. So we sat in the room and we said, because our advantage was because I spoke the same English as I'm speaking now, and Eniola was much, much better than me, highly educated. And we said that we need to do and change things. So this is how we started, campaigning on the very first night, me and him share a flat in the YMCA in Glasgow and the north of Glasgow, which was a very deprived area, not because of asylum seekers, because there was no resources at all for the local people as well. So this is how we started, and we went around and spoke on many different issues which affected asylum seekers. During then it was the Labour government, and asylum seekers were recently introduced to the vouchers. There was no cash. Like now you get £38 a week, if you're an adult asylum seeker. And 22 years ago, it was £36 a week. So the Home Office is so generous, they increased the £2, in 22 years for asylum seekers who seek asylum. It's not like what you read in the right-wing media and right-wing politician that we grab all your resources and we steal every penny in this country. So which is absolutely not true. But then we started, we engaged with politicians. This is how I got to know Positive Action in Housing, one of the very first charities in Glasgow. They approach us and we explain our problems, and then we campaign against the voucher system in Scotland, which we were very successful. And then in 2003 and 4, we found out, that there are dawn raids, which we never heard before. We only knew the raids, what you call carried out by powerful governments against their enemies, like in Afghanistan and other countries. But we got to know that this is called dawn raids, and it's carried out 3 in the morning. And during that time in Scotland, I don't know, in other parts of the country, our UK, asylum seekers with their children were taken 3 in the morning and detained in a detention center called Dungavel, which we campaigned for many, many years. Women and children were detained. We campaigned against the detention, that women and children shouldn't be detained, and we were successful in that campaign. And then later on, we found the Glasgow girls. I'm not part of Glasgow girls, but very young girls in a secondary school in Glasgow. They came together, asylum seekers, and found the Glasgow girls, who were very, very successful and tried to stop the dawn raids. This is how we started. And going after the Home Office, we got friends and activists in every parts of Glasgow in the year 2003 and 4. So everywhere the Home Office went, we whether it's 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, committed people for the rights of asylum seekers, as Glasgow is very well, standing with the rights of asylum seekers. So we will go there in the area and stop the Home Office. On many occasions, we were very, very successful. And even one particular day, we raided the home office. We had few politicians and quite famous, actors in our group. We raided the home office. We entered their office, and we closed their office from inside. And we we spend the day there in their office in Glasgow. And it's just to tell them that how it feels when you are locked in, when you are, having nowhere to go. But then, on different issues in different matters, we campaign on the daily basis in Scotland. In Scotland, one thing is, I think, I always say this, no disrespect to any other person, that we have any government in Scotland, whether it's the Labour or especially the SNP government right now, they are on the side of asylum seekers. The leader gives a welcoming statement, whether they have the power or they don't have the power over asylum and immigration issues, but the feeling is that the politicians are on the side of asylum seekers, and it tells you clearly and very openly that you are welcome to Scotland, and Scotland is your home. It doesn't matter whether a refugee or asylum seeker or immigrant or migrant from anywhere. So that's very positive from the very start in Scotland, and that's the positive plus. But then we have the Home Office, as we all know how it operates and how badly they operate and how badly they treat asylum seekers. So on this particular issue, coming to the Kenmure Street in Pollokshields, which is predominantly an Asian area right now, many Muslims. I think it's the biggest ethnic minority area in Scotland, Pollokshields. And then I was in a local mosque. It was on Eid's Day, and my nephew, who just stays not far from where the raid happened, he texted me. He said there's something going on, and he's quite young, my nephew, and he said your people are there, because he is young, he doesn't understand what is happening. So he thought everywhere he see the protesters, he think it's us, So I asked him to take a small video and send it to me. So he sent me a 30 minutes video, and then I saw the Home Office raid happening in the area. So we finished our prayers and went to the area. And from there, what we saw was, about 30, 40 people surrounding the Home Office van and chanting as usual, let them free. That was the biggest chant on the day. When you were there, and if you experience this, I'm sure, you will have this goosebumps, or, your hair will stand. And from there, I started to, send messages to my friends and colleagues and other activists. Then other friends arrived, and they knew. I literally sent about 600 messages on every social media account I had, to invite people to come. And everybody, whoever, was available, they came and protested against the Home Office. And then the sad day was, it was on the day where the Scottish Parliament was the first day, and the politicians were taking their oath of office. And because we have very good link with the local politicians, so I try personally to text some of the politicians, and I send a personal message to Nicola Sturgeon on her social media, but probably she was, to be elected as the first minister on the day, so she wasn't, free for every other issue on that particular day, but she did release as a statement condemning what was happening, as she always does, standing with refugees and asylum seekers. So we managed to secure few MSP politicians. We had a megaphone from Strathclyde University. I don't know how that megaphone happens to be there on that particular day, but very powerful one. And we secured some of the politicians from the Labour Party, including their leader, Anas Sarwar and Paul Sweeney, Pauline McNeill, and two of the MPs who are always working very, very hard with asylum seekers and refugees, Chris Stephan and Alison Tullis. So we managed, them, and a few of them spoke on the megaphone through the telephone. And Chris Stephan, who is an MP, and also Alison Tullis, who is the local MP, they were there physically and supporting us while working at the background, telling the Home Office that this shouldn't happen on the day of Eid. But the phenomenon thing was that nobody knew who were inside the van, although I had a rough idea that who they were, but I didn't want to speculate until we were sure. And but the good thing, or the beauty on that particular day was, I saw Jewish people with young children who are my friends. They were there. I saw Christians, I saw Hindus, of course, there were Muslims, there were, you know, black people, brown people, or white people, or whatever you describe their colors, they were there. And everybody was so united and chanting the same slogan, they are our neighbors, you know, and nobody even know them, who they were, but they came, you know, for their neighbors, or for the people who are less fortunate, you know, in our society. And then the crowd started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then by then we have many politicians among us and activists and prominent lawyer like our solicitors like Amar Anwar, who's a close friend. And each day it's difficult to get people to come, you know. So we started about 10:30. I think we finished about 6 o'clock or maybe later than that. And until the people were released, you know, the police played so many different tricks on us, because I knew the liaison committee officers or community officers who were there. They said, you know, it's not up to them, it's up to the home office. Then they said, if we allow the paramedics, you know, to examine the guys, we said, look, they can come and they can see the guys. They say, no, if they take them away, you know, somewhere in a peaceful place where they can examine them. But they were planning to, you know, trying to play the tricks that if they take them away, so that's the end of the guys, you know, and ending in a detention center somewhere. So we refused everything, and all we were appealing to the crowd was that we want to have it peaceful, and we want to end this peacefully. But we were very resistant that we don't want to go away from here until these two guys were released. And then finally, Amar Anwar, who is one of Scotland's top human rights lawyer, he and myself, he negotiated with the police, as he's a criminal lawyer in Scotland, that the police finally realized that it was impossible because the crowd was getting bigger and bigger. People were leaving their offices and they were coming. The help we received from the Gurdwara on that particular day was phenomenal. You know, we had people who we have never seen before. They were bringing us food, drinks, you know. Everybody was playing their bets, and this became a national news. And you know, by the time it was developing, and it became an international news. And I read recently that it was the biggest or number 10th most effective protest in the world, you know, which made the difference in the community, meaning that people coming together no matter what your background was. And I'm so glad that I was there and I was playing my bets as an activist, because you know, the two people who were there, we were asking the police if they were okay inside, because initially the police refused any water or any help. But I told the police that, you know, they're inside. And when the van opened, I saw them, they were in a very tiny place, you know, that you cannot even stretch your legs. You know, in that police van, you have to be probably locked maybe maximum an hour before they take you to a police station. But these guys were there, you know, for hours, almost the whole day or the entire day. And this is how the Home Office does, you know, dawn raids. I mean, they choose the wrong day and the wrong date, and probably they choose the wrong people on that particular day. So they never realized that this will happen on this particular day. But the credit went to the person who was under the van. We were all there shouting and screaming. There was a particular person who stopped this van and he jumped underneath the van, and he was lying under the van on a very hard surface on a road, you know, for like 10 hours nearly. You know, he was lying under the van. So that man is a real hero. We were just there maybe, you know, like extras or in the background, but that man was the real hero who was under the van, and who tried to prevent, you know, the Home Office deportation on that particular day. If that man was not there, probably this Kenmure Street would not have happened. But then there were many, many good people, you know, who sincerely and honestly, they came and they believe in that what the British, because I always say this, because politics and asylum issues are very linked. Because if you look around the countries, that most of the asylum seekers are the product of British and American bombs or their illegal wars, you know. Because sometimes when I put a post, people tell me that if you criticize it, if you don't like it, go home. My home is destroyed. I have no home because I come from Afghanistan. Afghanistan has been destroyed for the past 44, 45 years. You know, we have fought so many different wars. And most of them were British and American and Western wars. You know, first the Soviet Union, then the Mujahideen, and then the ugly Al-Qaeda, and then the most terrible people, Taliban and the Islamic State. So was in Iraq, in Yemen, you know, where people are killed with British bombs in Yemen, where the Saudis are butchering, you know, innocent Yemenis. in Libya, where Britain was involved again, with the help of French and others, in Lebanon, in Sudan, in Somalia, in so many other countries. So I always say this whenever I give a speech or public speaking, that if Britain bomb less countries, or if the West bomb less countries, then less asylum seekers will come here. You see, like now, the practical example is Ukraine. Poland have taken few million asylum seekers from Ukraine, and Britain have not even taken 12,000 so far. So my point is that whenever there is a war, majority of asylum seekers goes to the nearest destination. Like, for example, in Afghanistan, 7 million Afghans went to Pakistan, about 3 to 4 million went to Iran. In the case of Iraq, where people went to neighboring countries, Palestine, where people are in Jordan, in Lebanon, and Ukraine is the same, where millions of refugees from Ukraine went to Poland, not millions came to Britain or millions came to Germany. It's few thousand they're taking. But sadly, it's all related now, I feel really bad whenever I say this, and people always say why we have to mention this, but this is very important, because war kills people, war destroys the entire population, it displaces you. You have nowhere to go when your country is bombed 3 o'clock in the morning, when your family is taken away from you. You want to go somewhere and rebuild your life. And very seldomly you end up in Western Europe. But then again, when you come here, you are labeled, by politicians and by the media. Like now we see in the war in Ukraine, the Ukrainians are more civilized than the Syrian, than Afghans, and then others in the eyes of some politician and media. A refugee is a refugee. There is an international law which is, where Britain is a signatory to it, and they have signed this agreement that Britain will take, refugees or asylum seekers according to that convention, the Geneva Convention. But now when we have the Ukrainian, I have the high sympathy for the Ukrainians, because I know how it feels as an Afghan when your family is bombed, when your country is bombed, when your relatives are killed, when the bombs are dropping 3 in the morning and you are running with your children and you're dragging your children and you want to take them to a shelter or to a bunker, so they're not killed in the bombs. So I have that feelings, and I know how it feels when you are bombed, when your relatives are killed, when your family is killed, when you are being raped by, the soldiers, who are not bound by any rules or regulation or international treaties. So I have that feelings for the Ukrainian. But then we have the question, the same thing happened to Afghans, to Iraqis, to Syrian, to Yemenis, to Palestinian, and to Sudanese and Somalis. But we didn't have that quick reaction from the Home Office, although it's not very effective even when we talk about the Ukrainian. But suddenly, every border is open for the Ukrainian, which is really good. But my point is, you cannot treat one color refugees differently, because either they're black or they're brown or they're Muslim or they're from the poor background. And then suddenly you have, millions of people coming into Europe, and then there is no crisis. Just before the Ukrainian crisis, maybe you have seen it on the border between Belarus, is it Belarus? Yeah, I cannot, yeah, and the Ukrainian border, where 7,000 refugees are there with women and children, 11 of them killed by the security forces. They were not allowed to enter Europe or Poland or any other place, because the Polish prime minister or one of their politicians clearly said, we are not going to have a single Muslim refugee in our country. Because, you have this perception that, people from poor background, people who are, from war-torn countries, who are not white or with green or blue eyes, and so they're not yours. Suddenly now we have, as everybody says, we don't have, refugee crisis in this country. We have racism crisis in this country, because, we have the border bill. If as I think you or one of your colleagues was saying in the chat room, that the border bill currently running from one place to another between the House of Lords and the House of Parliament, under that particular legislation, if passed, Ukrainian will be deemed illegal to come to Britain. They have to be sent back. They will not be allowed to claim asylum or to claim any sort of help or support in this country. So they will be facing up to 4 years in prison if that current legislation is passed, But then suddenly we have Boris and Priti Patel, who comes in and, show their faces as though they're really humanitarian. They care. They don't really care. If they really care, they should abandon that bill which is currently pending in the House of Lords, in the House of Parliament. So they should abolish that bill, get rid of that bill. If they're really, thinking or caring for refugees, because the Ukrainian will come under that legislation as well. It will not be only the Afghans or the Syrian or the Iraqis or the Kurdish or others. So that bill will cover every refugee or every asylum seekers who come to this country illegally. And the other thing is, when Priti Patel and Boris is telling us that, you should use legal routes. Every single route for asylum seekers is shut. There is no single route, that let's say, for example, if I'm running from the terrorist group in Afghanistan, the Taliban right now, or the Barbarian, as I call them, do you really think that I will make it to the British embassy? There is no British embassy in many conflict countries. There is no British consulate or British embassies. So how I'm going to find a legal route, to come to Britain or to come to France or any other countries? So the only route is, the routes open to asylum seekers or refugees, the smugglers route, which is, very, very barbaric. But people have to run away, to save their families and their children. But these are major issues right now in Britain, where on one hand, the government tries to portray themselves that they're very humanitarian and they're taking, the Ukrainian. But on the other hand, in the same time, they're having this nationality and borders bill, which will criminalize, the Ukrainian as well as the Afghans and the Iraqis and the Syrian and others who are coming here. And, if you arrive on the back of the lorry or the dinghy or the boat or train or whatever without valid visa, so the current legislation will treat you as a criminal and you will face a imprisonment for up to 4 years. That's what the legislation says. And your asylum claim in this country will be inadmissible. You will not claim asylum. You will not be eligible to claim asylum in this country because you have come illegally. So these are all the issues. And the point is, if we come together, I always say this to my colleagues, when we have a common cause to fight, we have to come. And I believe there are, majority of the people in this country, they're very sympathetic to the causes of asylum seekers and refugees in this country. If they were not, they wouldn't be housing them in their homes, in their flats, they wouldn't be offering, and these rooms in houses to Ukrainian refugees or other refugees. I know a scheme, this scheme was existed in Scotland, and run by Positive Action in Housing. And they place many asylum seekers with, families across Britain. And this scheme was running. It wasn't invented by, Tory government. It was many years ago here in Scotland, people offering their extra rooms or the extra space in their rooms or in their houses, giving them to asylum seekers. But now, even if we look, how humanitarian is the government is, they are passing the burden to the population. They're not taking responsibility, for the Ukrainian asylum seekers or refugees who come here. The people are taking the burden. They're taking them to their homes, and the policy is flawed. It's not working. The policy tells you that you should be willing to take someone for at least 6 months. What if I fell out with my co-host? What if, we don't go along? So in that particular instance, you will become homeless. By the time the Home Office look after you, you will be having a lot of ups and downs in your life. And, when you run away from the likes of Putin, the bombs and, the brutality happening right now, against the innocent Ukrainian right now. So there are major things, but I think the best thing is that we come together as we did in Pollokshies on Kinmure Street. I think that's the beauty of us. When we were there, I mean, young children, I have a lot of friends, who came with their family and their children. I saw Black people, as I told you. I saw white people. I saw African. I saw Jewish people with their family members, their young children. I saw Muslims. I saw gays, lesbian, LGBT, religious people with long beard, with turban, and everybody was chanting just one chant, and they said they are our neighbors, and they didn't even know who were inside the van, you know, until at the very latest stage when we took them out. And they were not even Muslims, they were Sikhs or Hindus, and the local mosque offered us sanctuary. You know, we went there away from the crowd and from the police. When the deal was signed, that the police will not rearrest them or detain them again, so the police will release them unconditionally. So we went to a local mosque, you know, and there we just sit there for a few minutes and we talked to the guys, and we got them solicitors, you know, who took their cases on. And now I don't know at what stage is their asylum application or their legal status in this country, but it's just showing you, when we stand together, like, you know, people in this room, I don't know any one of you, but, you know, probably you don't know me personally or anything, maybe you heard somewhere, but this shows how caring you are, you know, that you on this particular day, probably it's maybe dinner time, very close, you know, or your tea time, as the Irish say, you know, so maybe, you know, and you are giving up that precious time and thinking about others who are less fortunate, and, you know, who run away from the likes of Putin and you know, Britain's and American bombings and others, and trying to seek sanctuary in this country and trying to rebuild their lives. So it's really, you know, very commendable, you know, and as I always say, there are more good people in this country rather than the few lunatics, you know, and the few right-wing medias and politicians who tell you that, you know, we steal your resources. I mean, who steal the resources? We know who stole it. Look at Rishi Sunak. His wife doesn't even pay her taxes. So it's her who's, you know, stealing the money. You know, it's not me who's stealing that money. I work very little and I pay my fair share of my taxes. I mean, I came to Britain 22 years ago. I was not allowed for 6 months to work. And once I was allowed to work, until today, I'm not without work. And I, you know, I live here as a law-abiding citizens. I contribute in many different ways. And so are other refugees, you know, very talented refugees we have, you know, skill shortages in this country. And during the pandemic, you know, they were trying to charter special planes from Romania to bring workers, you know, here in this country to you know, to do the harvest for strawberries and raspberries. But then you have very young and fit people in this country, asylum seekers, who could have done the same job, you know, with the same money. But then you don't allow them to work, you know. That's the basic human dignity you have taken away from them. You know, I mean, the right to work is, you know, if I'm allowed to work, I rather go and work and have my own room in my own privacy than relying on someone else, you know, who constantly, you know, taunt me that you're a beggar, you're a, you know, you're a terrorist, you are not from us, you don't belong here. So I rather have a place of my own, go and work and have my family and, you know, contribute to the society, rather than depressed, you know, and sitting in the house in the corner of four walls, you know, and not allowed to do anything. So there are many, many things, but to conclude is, maybe I just, because I can say so many things, but you know, unity is the best thing. It doesn't matter who you are, you know, doesn't matter what your background is, you know, and if we come together, I think we can achieve so many things. You know, Kinmare was one of the example where we were called thugs by Priti Patel, you know, and we were professional thugs, as she told us, that we were all professional thugs. And I gave an interview to, I don't know, it was a radio or television channel, I can't remember. And people were calling in and they said we were paid by the First Minister of Scotland to do this protest. You know, they come up with odd stories, you know, they don't look at the humanity, that people have hearts and feelings, you know, that they care for their neighbors, they care for people who are in need, you know. I mean, coronavirus was finally, coronavirus was the best example. You know, nobody thought that we will empty the shelves of Tesco and Asda, and you know, and we will be running after a pack of pasta, and we will be fighting over a roll of toilet paper. So you know, there's an example. In Britain wasn't at war during coronavirus. It's a rich country. There was no war going on. There was no bomb dropping, but you know, it's just you want to protect your family and your children. The same is asylum seekers. You know, they want to protect their future. They want to have children. They want to have family, and they want to have just a life like everyone else. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.